Howdy ho, neighbor.
Heidi ho.
How goes it?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, welcome to James Pod podcast. This is episode 006.
It's the Sean Bean. Or the Alec Trevelyan of our show.
It's an Alec Trevelyan episode. And this episode, we go into his character and examine every single line that he says in GoldenEye. No. We are covering The Living Daylights. And I'm sitting here. My name is Aaron Nix. I'm sitting here with my good friend, co-host, / enemy, Carlin Trammell. How are you, Carlin?
I don't know. I don't know how I am. I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed already.
Is QK not giving you the notes? Is that why you don't know how you are?
Well, we'll talk about QK and my issue with her notes in just a minute. But
we will talk about QK. Yes.
Let me just say, I just want to get this out there. I'm a little frustrated.
Okay.
With one of the co-hosts on this show.
Are you talking about me?
No, I'm not talking about you. You showed up. I'm talking about Alabama Dog. Alabama Dog, nowhere to be found today. He's not here.
What are you talking about? He's outside.
Alabama Dog isn't here. He's not here for this show. I'm a little concerned about his level of commitment to this podcast.
He hosts in spirit. And you know this. This is the agreement we signed up for. He does all the work on the back end.
I just don't feel like he is committed to this show. Like, I think he feels like it takes too much time, or he's got better things to do, or he's got other obligations and responsibilities. And I just don't think he has the devotion to this podcast that maybe he should. When he signed up for it, when he agreed to do this podcast, I expected more.
Okay. No, I understand what you're saying. You're frustrated. But Alabama Dog, since we've started the podcast, however many months ago, 6 months ago, his reputation has skyrocketed as the Alabama Dog, and he's been really active in the Alabama area with shelters and being a spokesperson, and he's out there getting the James Pod message to the public.
Do you feel though that's the case, or do you feel like he's out there getting the Alabama Dog message to the people?
I don't know. I haven't been to one of his speaking events, and he's got many speaking events scheduled for the next couple months or so.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well, I think it all started when he wanted to try and educate people. It all came out of this motivation to educate people. And he set up like a program called Alabama Dog U.
I know all about this.
Well, I'm explain it to the listeners who may not be aware of it.
Okay. And
so he has these sessions, Alabama Dog U, where you go and you can learn about. I don't know. I haven't been to one of them, but I mean, I've never been to one of these, but I've seen blog posts and photos and poorly made videos based on these. He had one where he talked about how to ride in a truck. He likes riding in trucks. Yeah, well, in the back, like in the back of a truck, versus in the passenger seat.
Exactly. I mean, it's dangerous, right? I mean, it's illegal. I assume in most states. I don't know about Alabama.
I don't know.
Apparently, it's not illegal. But he teaches people how to do it properly.
Well, he teaches dogs how to do it properly.
Everybody.
Well, anybody who will attend the Alabama.
Yeah, if you can understand, if you're a human and can understand Alabama Dog, then obviously you can attend. So, are you jealous that you don't have a Carlin Trammell University? Is that what's going on?
Not
here?
at all. You know why I'm not? Because I'm a co-host of the greatest James Bond podcast that is available on the internet.
You know how we're the greatest? You know how we know it? I mean, we have, let's see, we're up to 7 reviews now on iTunes?
7 reviews? A total of 7 reviews?
7.
Are you kidding me?
Star ratings I mean,
ratings. 7 ratings.
Right, sorry,
We have
7
only.
ratings.
I think we only have 4
four
written
US
reviews on the U.S. store.
Yes. No, you're right. 7 reviews, 7-star ratings. Sorry.
Well, you know what that says to me. And then maybe I'll use this to kind of transition into my QK issue. It says to me that we have some listeners out there. We've talked before about how, okay, you're a listener, I'm a listener, Alabama Dog is a listener, QK is a listener.
Maybe we have more. Maybe we have more.
It appears as though, to me, that we have more. So I have a confession. I did not listen to our last episode. Not even while we were recording it did I listen. Mm-hmm. So when it came...
That was pretty obvious.
When it came time to watch the movie for this show, I got the notes from QK, and she had on there to watch... she just had Dalton, and then she had like L.I. And so I mistakenly watched License to Kill. And then realized later, as you and I were talking, it was Living Daylights I was supposed to watch. So I watched most of License to Kill, and then stopped, and then watched The Living Daylights.
Oh, she wrote L.I. And you
L.I.
You didn't know if that was License or Living.
Well, I would assume she would have put the L.I. if it was The Living Daylights. But she just put L.I. So I thought, License to Kill. Okay, I got it.
So you're blaming this on QK.
She should have taken better notes, is all I'm saying. I'm not blaming it on anyone per se, I guess. I'm kind of blaming it on her, yes. But no, I'm not blaming her. I mean, I'm blaming her, but I'm not blaming her at the same time.
Well, can she get on right now and explain herself right now? I mean, can we do that?
If she did that, she would be that would be disrupting the various tasks that I have her already working on, the various important tasks that she is in the middle of doing that she needs to accomplish.
By tasks, you mean tweeting me pictures of cats?
Is that what she does on Twitter? I don't know. I don't really pay attention to what she does on Twitter.
Oh, if you only knew. If you only knew. Okay.
So
you watch License to Kill.
I don't know. I don't know what to do now. I feel as though since I've watched 2 movies, or most of one and then another one, that's really that's not what we set out to do. And it's kind of messed with me because so now I'm like, okay, which scene did that take place in? Was it License to Kill, or was it Living Daylights? So I'm gonna leave it up to you.
You're mixing the movies up simply because of Timothy Dalton. Is what you're saying?
Not simply because I watched them back to back.
Okay. I mean, all right. Well, we'll try to make this work. And I have a confession. It took me about 3 different nights to finish The Living Daylights. So
wait, why 3 different nights? I mean, what?
Because I fell asleep. I fell asleep the first night. I watched a half hour of The Living Daylights, and I just fell asleep. The second night I tried again, and of course I had to rewatch it because I'm like, what the heck's going on? Because I'll be honest, the Dalton movies never really been on my radar. They're not usually ones that are on TV a whole lot, and I've had kind of a bad taste in my mouth from them ever since I've watched them when I was little.
Well, don't chew on VHS tapes for one.
Laser discs.
Laser discs.
Oh, it's dangerous. Anyway, so it took me 3 different times to actually finish it all the way through. And in fact, just before this, before we started talking here, I sat down and I had to rewatch some scenes. I'm like, I completely forget what's going on here.
Are you dumb? I mean, what?
No, it's because I kept falling asleep, and I'm like, I don't know if I kept missing scenes, but I finished the movie, and I'm like, wait a second here. There are some big gaps in this movie that I'm not aware of that I had to go back and revisit.
Well, here's a suggestion for you. Next time we watch one of these movies and you're setting out to sit down and try and watch, say, our next movie, which we'll talk about later, what that movie will be.
Yeah.
I would suggest maybe getting just a couple of drops, or maybe just 1 drop of Peppy coffee.
That's exactly why this is happening. I ran out of Peppy coffee because I live in Nebraska now. I had my Peppy coffee subscription where they delivered it to my house and the gum every day to my house.
Right. Did
But
you let that run out?
I let that run out, and I was expecting a Christmas present from either you or Alabama Dog. Never came.
Oh, I was waiting for this.
And it's
I was expecting a
it's
Christmas
come out-
present, and I never got one. Yeah.
no. I mean,
no, I get it. I get
You're
it.
hurting by not giving me a birth or a Christmas gift of Peppy coffee. You're hurting the podcast, and you're hurting the listeners right now that having listened to us talk about Peppy coffee and random stuff they don't really care about.
No.
They're here to listen about James Bond.
I get it. I get it that you're upset with me that I didn't get you a Christmas gift this year. And would you allow me to perhaps explain to you why I had not gotten you a Christmas gift? And I'll go ahead and say this. Yet. I'm using little air quotes. Yet.
Oh, okay.
Because is it all right if I divulge a little personal information about you?
I'm scared, but sure.
Well, I mean, let me just congratulate you on the birth of your second child, Sean, Roger, Timothy, Pierce, Daniel, Nix. It's kind of a mouthful, but I applaud you on that. I've heard that George Lazenby and his family are a little upset, but that's okay.
They're just gonna have to deal with it.
But congratulations on the birth of your.
Thank you.
I'm hoping to soon also include a baby gift for you.
Oh,
that has not. It just hasn't come together yet. So that baby gift
is it going to be a monogrammed gift? Because that might take up a lot of space. I'm just warning you right now.
That's part of the issue. Is the name is so long that it's taking like weeks to get this monogramming done.
I've come into issues with that. I mean, the birth certificate is. They had to have it print out a second page simply because of the name.
Are they using still the paper with the little circles on the side that you have to tear off? The little dot matrix printers are still printing.
I don't
on that.
Yeah,
in Nebraska. That's what I'm saying. I'm making fun of Nebraska.
It's like 3 feet long. It took like a few weeks just to print. I mean, they can get away with this because the population is so low in Nebraska right now that they can afford to keep using those printers. Yeah. So anyway, so we just got it. So I ask you if that's the problem because it's a problem with us. So okay. Well, thank you for your congratulations, and I guess I'll be expecting a baby gift as well.
I'd say at some point,
and Sean will.
Some point before the child's 3rd or 4th birthday, I would look for that.
Well, hopefully it comes before we finish this podcast, whenever we get to episode 24, 25, however many we do.
Do you think listeners, when we talk about the finite nature of this show, the fact that we see...
Is that discouraging? Is that discouraging?
Do you think that's discouraging, or do you think that they're excited by that? Do you think it's like, oh, thankfully I won't have to listen anymore? After... 20 more episodes, they'll be done.
I think of it like episodic TV. So, and I feel you may feel the same way. But like when there's a series that you really like, I always prefer to know that the series has an end in sight. So when I watch, when I'm on season 3 of Breaking Bad, I like to know that season 5 will be the last season. Great. So I know it's not just going to be drug on,
right.
And it's just never going to end. I know that they have a reason, and there's an actual arc to the characters. So I think audience can respect that there's going to be an arc to the series.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, I felt the same way about the show Lost, which I know some people weren't happy with how that ended. But the reason I bring up Lost is that it's actually the Living Daylights related. I bring up Lost specifically. Like you bring up television, and then I said Lost, and I'm actually working to get us back on topic because one of the characters in Lost, the actor who played Jack's dad, he was in the Living Daylights.
What actor?
He was Felix.
Oh, really?
John Terry.
I like John Terry. I like Felix's little scene in this movie.
I was thinking, and having watched chunks of License to Kill, I was kind of regretting that John Terry hadn't continued on as Felix in the next movie. because I liked him, and I liked him in his it's almost like this Charlie's Angels-esque group of, well, he's just got two girls working for him, but it's just like
Yeah. Like they're hookers and then they're his agents, and they bring him in and he like turns around and he has this cupboard with the alcohol in it. Yes, I love how the Americans are perceived in this movie.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, I also noticed an interesting casting choice in The Living Daylights that I thought was really interesting, that continued within the Bond series, and that was the character of Whitaker. So Joe Don Baker.
Right.
So he's
in two of Brosnan's movies. The first two.
Yeah, and so when we talked about GoldenEye, we discussed how the very beginning of GoldenEye with 006, that they said it happened, 10 years prior?
Oh, right,
or
right,
10
right.
or 8 years prior. And we talked about how, so the Pierce Brosnan Bond was taking place during the Dalton movies.
Well, even the more,
while
even
those
back
were
into
coming
the
out.
Roger Moore
Yeah.
era. Right,
Yeah,
right.
back when the Roger Moore era. So the fact that Joe Don Baker, it's Whitaker, was in The Living Daylights as an arms dealer who Dalton eventually kills, it makes you wonder, like, did he come back alive and turn into a good guy for the CIA, for GoldenEye? Or is it his twin brother that comes back in the GoldenEye? Like, why would they cast somebody who was a villain and recast him as like a good guy in a movie that comes soon after? It's very interesting.
And even if he was a twin brother, then why doesn't Pierce Brosnan's Bond immediately not knowing, like, whoa, there's Whitaker, I thought I killed him, and like pull his gun on him? Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't have that sort of animosity towards him at all.
So it makes you think if there's an alternate reality going on in the late 80s where there's a Dalton Bond and a Pierce Brosnan Bond.
Oh, I see. You're just doing whatever you can to get rid of the Dalton Bonds. You're trying to retcon them out of existence, to use a comic book term.
No, absolutely not. Yes, I am.
No. See, I'll
Why
say
why can't there be an alternate universe? Why can't they pull like a Star Trek 2009 and pull out like a whole alternate? I don't know. I opened up a can of worms, audience members. But there could be an alternate universe where they can coexist.
I don't really understand why people have a problem with Dalton's Bond. And
Who said I had a problem? Who said I had a problem?
Well, you said the whole movies. You said at the beginning. We could go back and listen to the tape, but you were saying
I said that I had a bad taste growing up, and I was. And
then
I don't
you were
really
saying,
know.
it took me like 3 hours to watch it. I was just like,
Yeah, I don't really.
I
I wasn't really too familiar. If I could pick any Bond movies I'm not really familiar with, it's the two Dalton movies. And looking at them now, we can get into this later if you want, but I have a different outlook on The Living Daylights.
You have a different outlook coming out of it than you did going into it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't want to forget about this other thing that we should do. I don't want to not talk about The Living Daylights. But I don't feel as though I feel like we need to not forget this part. And that is,
Bring it on.
We have dodgeball teams that we have started setting up.
Dodgeball!
I like that you are creating like a little sound bumper for this. That's nice. That's good. That's good.
Well, I was gonna use that and put some reverb on it. Make it cool. Make it flashy.
Sound like the Laserdisc people. Or whatever.
Laserdisc.
Dodgeball.
No, it's not the Laserdisc. We had this discussion. It's Dolby Digital.
Dolby Digital. That's right. Dodgeball Digital.
Okay, so after last month when we chose our teams, the audience listeners probably know that my team, the Aaron team, completely annihilated the Carlin team in last month's match.
When did this happen?
I mean, you weren't there? You weren't there? Well, maybe that's why your team stunk it up. I mean, Solitaire didn't even show up because I sent Roger Moore to her house ahead of time.
I'd like to see the footage of anyone attempting to
Tiger
hit Boris with a dodgeball because he is invincible.
Tiger Tanaka on your team was just sitting in the corner hiding, being a ninja, and I don't think he knew like that he had to participate in the game because he was too busy about revealing that he was in the room.
That's all right. Because Cigar Girl was just throwing dodgeballs with both hands and kicking them and like they were going all over, hitting Baron Samedi in the head.
Okay, well we'll have to review the tape. Maybe like a Sports Center top 10 plays type recap of last month's.
All right.
Okay.
So I think we had talked about we could add a member we could add to our teams and even do what did we say? We could add a member and then trade somebody out, or just add a member.
Yes. So every new episode up until we each reach 10 players on our team.
Okay.
We're allowed to add like one player. So since we each have 5 players, we'll add a player. And if we wanted to do any trades, or
now's the time to do it.
Yeah, now's the time to do them. But once you drop a player, that player becomes fair game for the other team.
Okay. So for example, if I drop Tiger Tanaka, he would be fair game. You could pick him up.
Yeah. So this week you get to choose first. So if you go ahead and choose a 6th player, but you have to make all of your changes at the beginning, I could go ahead and pick up Boris if you dropped Boris.
Okay.
Please drop Boris. Drop Boris.
I'm not dropping Boris. I can tell you that. Well, I will say that I am going to add Timothy Dalton's James Bond to my team. So I now have a James Bond on my team, and it is going to be Timothy Dalton. I feel as though, because he looks like he wears a lot of looser clothing than the previous Bonds did. Like he's not, like those suits, and like he's wearing those like windbreakers that seem a little more loose fitting. I think that's going to come into play, making him just a little more agile, a little more spry on the court. And so I think he's
the 80s wardrobe is doing it for you.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for this dodgeball team.
Okay. That's a smart choice. Dalton is a very serious Bond.
And he is not messing around.
He will not take this game lightly.
He's going to get quite annoyed if anyone is messing around. If you look all through Living Daylights, he is constantly rolling his eyes. He is constantly exasperated, and that tells me he is serious about what he sets out to do. So there's not going to be any of this occasionally he's like, oh, he got the boot. He's making a little jokes here and there, but it is very limited in what he's doing there. He is getting the job done. He is your Bond. You're going to have to sit there and listen to him crack. Like he'll throw a ball, he'll beam one of my guys in the head, and then you got to sit there for like a half an hour listening to crack jokes for a while.
But the difference is that my Bond, Roger Moore, hardly does any work, but he still gets the job done with style.
That's true.
So he uses almost no energy, and things will happen around him that will benefit Roger Moore.
Yes.
So that's a strategic choice there. So are you going to drop anybody or substitute anybody in?
I will tell you, I contemplated swapping out one of the players for the Miriam Dabo character, Kara, or Kara, however they said it. But ultimately, I decided against it. Though I like that character a great deal, I don't think she's a strong enough replacement for any of the
her cello skills that was tempting you.
No, it's just her. She for whatever reason, and I cannot really, nor probably should I articulate it. She is probably one of my favorite Bond girls, and probably because she might be the one who's the most approachable of all the Bond girls. They're all exotic. Mm-hmm. They're all beautiful, but they're all like, there's no way Carlin Trammel's ever hanging out with that girl. But
there's no. Yeah.
But this girl, she's a little more real. Like she and Bond are going out to the fair together. They're going to hang out at a concert together. There's like this little romantic comedy bit of the movie, and you're like, I don't know, just as you're watching, you're like, oh, she seems like she'd be kind of a fun person to hang out with. Where I don't think any of the other Bond girls are like, oh, she'd be fun to hang out with.
Yeah. Well, it also helps that there's no mystery around her. Like, there's no twists and turns with her character. She doesn't backstab Bond, and she's really the only girl in this movie, where usually Bond is divided between the bad girl and the good girl, and which one's the bad one, which one's the good one, or whatever.
Right.
But really, she consumes Bond for the entire movie. So you actually have time to develop a relationship there.
Yeah. So I'm not going to do any dropping. I don't have to, right? I don't have to drop a character. I don't have to drop a.
Well, I understand. But I'm keeping my eye out for Kara for later episodes, because you just told me that you're interested in her, so I'm keeping my eye out. Eye out for her. Personally, I would have picked her up for her cello skills, because that's not her shooting skills. Okay, well, I'm gonna pick a sixth player.
Okay.
If you're done.
I'm done.
I'm gonna pick. I think I'm gonna pick Necros from The Living Daylights.
Yes, that's a good pick.
The henchman from this movie. Why? Because I think he had the best scene in the entire movie. The milkman fight scene, takeover of the huge estate was my favorite scene in the entire movie. And I feel like he's a good assassin. He can fight anybody. He's got milk bottles he's throwing at people.
Yeah, you're right. There's some throwing, so you
yeah. He's a great thrower, and not many characters you see like their throwing skills. But he is he's very athletic and very big and very you see him get in the pool, and he caught the robe, so he can catch.
Right.
And anyway, so Necros, that's who I'm going with.
Okay, that's a great pick.
And he wears headphones the whole time, so like he'll just they turn up magically when he kills people. I don't know how his headphones turn up so loud.
That's a great pick, and I'm glad you brought up the milkman scene, because that has within it a little sub scene that is one of my favorite, or one of the most notable scenes in a Bond film, I would say, ever. And I think it's very important that this happens, is that he shows up as the milkman, and eventually he and a regular guard get into one of the most awesome fights in the kitchen.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why I loved it so much. I have no idea who this guy is.
You start rooting for, I'm like, by the end I'm rooting for this guy. I don't know if he has a name. I didn't look at the credits. I probably should have, because this guy is like, he is my favorite character in the movie suddenly. I'm like, this guy who is nobody. And
he puts up a really good fight.
Yeah, because you always see this like in movies where like the bad guy shows up and he like just takes out all the guards, or he takes out all the police the police.
Yeah.
Guards and police officers in movies are always incompetent. And in this movie, it's only the 00 agents that aren't Bond that are incompetent. This regular guard winds up putting up a 5-minute fight with the milkman.
He came into the room, and I just expected the milk guy to shoot him or strangle him right away, but no, he just kept going and going, and they're burning each other's faces and throwing boiling water at each other, and I'm like, man, this is good.
It was probably the best scene in the movie. I agree. With you.
Yeah, definitely. So, so we both agree. Best scene in the movie is the milkman scene. That has nothing to do with James Bond. I love it. So, okay.
Are you switching anybody out in your team?
You know what? I think I have a great team. I think I have a fantastic team. I think my one weak link right now is
the coach.
You know what? I don't know why you have to do that. The coach? What am I doing? You didn't even show up to the match last month.
I'm sorry. It was just there, and I said it. I'm sorry.
My one weak link, I think, is Renard. I say that because Renard from The World Is Not Enough, and he doesn't have any feeling, or he feels no pain, and that's why I picked him. But honestly, in the movie, like you think he's the main villain, but he did the Dark Knight Rises switch where he's not really the main villain. So it's like it's really the importance of Renard is diminished significantly. And I just don't want him to feel like he's a second tier guy, and that's part of the reason why I recruited Necros to be on my team. Another henchman, to kind of validate Renard.
Okay, so are you switching him out or not?
No. I'm keeping.
So
him.
You just spent the last 10 minutes talking about Renard.
And we talked about what did we talk about? We talked about Cigar Girl for a while. She's not even a character.
I'm just saying, Renard's not even in the movie that we're talking about on this episode.
Okay,
and you just went on. You did a little.
Fine.
Oh,
I'll edit.
I give an ode to Renard. How I doth love thee, Renard.
No, I was saying he's my weak link, and he was feeling
Though
feeling a
you
little
be the
insignificant.
weak link, I shall still keep you on my team, for I do love you. I feel for you, though you can never feel for me.
Exactly. This is for all the Renard fans out there.
Yes, that'd be fine. Those are really the true fans of this podcast. Is the Renard circle
I'm looking
of
for.
people.
I'm looking for more iTunes reviews and people over in whatever country he's from, Russia or whatever. They're like, oh yes, I've been waiting for this.
This
ode to
James
Renard.
podcast is the best podcast because they actually finally appreciate Renard the way he should be appreciated.
Exactly. I'm waiting for our 5-star review. Simply about Renard.
It could happen.
Give credit where credit's due.
It could happen. Okay, so we've got our dodgeball team set. All right, so Living Daylights. We talked about our favorite scene. We talked a little about Felix. I've talked about the Bond girl, but I do think we haven't really, even though we sort of broached the subject, we haven't really talked about Dalton as much as I'd like to. And I know we're kind of coming close to the end of our desired time, but I do like Dalton as Bond, and I think some of it. I think our watching it out of order, to some extent, does this movie more than any other movie, perhaps, a little bit of a disservice. Because there's something about this movie and its resetting in the face of what the previous 7 movies had been that I think makes this movie super important. Despite the fact that I do agree that it is dry, too long, it goes into it's like this short story they expanded out to a 2-hour movie, and it's sort of meanders at times, and there are some things about it that are perhaps boring. But that said, I think it's a good, strong intro vehicle for Dalton, who is a very strong Bond, who turns the franchise around and points it into a more serious direction that I think it needed.
Okay. I can completely understand that. I can see that. I guess my biggest beef is that did it go far enough? Did the movie actually help Timothy Dalton out at all? And I watched this, and I didn't mind Timothy Dalton. I felt like he's a good actor. I think he's good in almost everything I see him in. And he's more than capable of playing Bond, especially like an action-driven Bond. I'm glad he didn't pull out the Roger Moore. He didn't go straight, Sean Connery or anything like that. I would have liked to seen some sort of humor with him, some sort of personality with him. Mostly because this movie is very plot driven, like you said. They kind of drag it out, and some of it tends to be boring. And the most we get from him is the romance, and the romance is kind of what saves this movie for me. But it's hard for me to watch Timothy Dalton without thinking of Neville Sinclair. I'm just saying that. I'm just
The character from The Rocketeer, his villainous
yes,
character. Yeah.
yeah. It's because The Rocketeer is so influential in my life. It's almost impossible for me to look at Timothy Dalton as anybody but a villain. So when I watch him as James Bond, I'm half expecting him to like pull out this like swastika or something, or or the Zeppelin to start flying overhead. It's
That would
it's
have been an
hard.
interesting twist for the series to go in. I think to like to suddenly reveal that all this time we didn't know it, but all this time James Bond was actually a Nazi.
So that's what I'm thinking of, and I know this is just me. This is just me, and it might be people of uh, my generation or my age range or whatever. Uh,
Well, I would say interesting because I'm slightly older than you. My initial exposure to Dalton was Prince Baron in Flash Gordon, and
oh,
for a long time, that's who I thought of whenever I saw Dalton.
okay,
I think I've gotten away from that now. I've seen Dalton in enough other things, from this to Hot Fuzz to he's actually in an episode of
great.
Doctor
That's great.
Who. The Beautician and the Beast. All those things that he's been in.
Yeah.
That
I guess it's because, usually the Bond actors have not really been well known. They have not had franchises before they start the Bond. The Bond is the franchise. And even though, actors like Daniel Craig have had other successful movies other than the Bond movies, it's to me like when I think of an actor, I think of the most memorable movies, and I think of The Rocketeer, and I think of him as a bad guy, and I can't think of him as James Bond. Like I watch the movie, and he's good in it, but it just looks like Timothy Dalton pretending to be James Bond. And I know that may seem stupid. It's like maybe it's because he is too serious. Maybe if he was a little bit more lighthearted or had just a couple more jokes, or there's a balance of the seriousness and the kind of playfulness Bond has. I felt like Pierce Brosnan, executed that really, really well in the movies after Dalton.
and I think it's been a complaint going further, even though we haven't dealt into the Craig movies yet. Though you bring up Skyfall every
Oh,
episode.
I was going to.
That's been a struggle. The first couple of Daniel Craig movies, he's very serious, and then in Skyfall, they lighten him up a little bit. It's still very serious, but he gets a little bit lighter, and so I guess I brought up Skyfall this time.
He did. Well, thank you. No, I even with Daniel Craig, the movies are more serious. They're more, I guess, mature, and the movies take themselves more seriously. I feel like he still has plenty of comedic moments, or I don't know.
Right.
Like,
Well, I mean,
like
like the pie fight in Quantum of Solace is a clear example of that, where they're bringing in some comedy that was much needed.
exactly like the fight. I forgot about that scene. It's funny. But it is kind of is refreshing because we had dealt with Roger Moore for so long, and I'll just say it. It seems like a Roger Moore movie without Roger Moore, and
I
I felt
agree.
like to make it a Timothy Dalton movie, they needed to do the GoldenEye revamp. They needed to do like get rid of everything and just kind of start over in terms of style and everything.
Well, this one at least was a very classic
Yeah,
Bond kind of movie, which
absolutely.
I think which was in one sense a good way for him to start. Was like, okay, here's just a basic Bond plot. Go,
Yeah,
let's see what you do with it, and then we'll get crazy for the next one. And I think that's actually kind of a good way to do the series at this point. Now that there's been 23 movies, let's do one where it's kind of typical Bond, and then let's do something crazy the next one, and just kind of alternate from
yeah,
here on out. But
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And I think having only one girl in this movie was probably the best thing about this movie because it let us actually get to know Timothy Dalton, instead of him having to start all these different relationships or anything like that. But I mean, I guess the only other women in this movie, only other girl besides Money Penny, was um, Pushkin's wife or girlfriend or something, and
well, she's barely in
that
it
was
too.
that was the most bizarre scene of the movie, because after Pushkin alerts his guard or whatever that Bond's in there, Timothy Dalton just rips off her clothing. to distract the guard, but then he just attacks him right away anyway. I was like, why is he taking off her clothes?
Well, the
And
same thing kind of happened. Like there's definitely nudity or a close to it used for distraction in this movie. That's a theme of this movie because
yeah,
the guard at
uh-huh.
the base for the pipeline, she does the same thing when she's trying to
Yeah.
distract the guy from looking at the control
I'm like,
panel.
what's with this like using this nudity just as a distraction? I don't know. I thought it was bizarre, but kind of funny at the same time.
Yeah, that seemed almost like a Roger Moore thing if you think about it. Like if you were like, it'd be fun to watch this movie and pretend it was Roger Moore doing those same scenes, and how would he have done it?
That's what I was doing a lot. I mean, a lot of Timothy Dalton's lines, I felt like he could have delivered them as like a sarcastic, ironic kind of way, like Roger Moore does, and it would completely change the tone of the movie. Um, so maybe Dalton realized that, and he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna play this straight.
Yeah. Well, I think that was for the best.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right. Well, so I think we're at the point where it's time
Yeah.
to give our feedback on the movie as far as where we think it stands in the pantheon of Bond films: top tier, middle tier, bottom tier.
Yeah. So
And what do you think?
um, I said that I've had bad tastes about this movie for a long time. Um, I ended up liking Dalton more than I usually give him credit for. Things I really didn't like about this movie is that there's no real villain in this movie. There's no real opponent. I felt like Necros, the henchman, was like the main villain, really. The most threatening, the biggest threat in the movie. Um, I would put this in the middle for me.
Okay. So
I
you're
kind
so if
of
I
had
write down middle, that's what it is.
yeah, middle. Put it in the middle.
All right.
And okay, so you've been kind of bottom heavy lately with movies we've watched. So are you going to switch this up a little bit here?
Well, to recap, I mean, you now have 6 movies rated where you've got 2 in the top, 1 in the bottom, and 3 in the middle.
Yeah, I'm
And
middle heavy.
I've had 2 in the middle, 2 in the bottom, 1 in the top. So
Oh,
I'm not too dissimilar. I kind of want. I think like for you, you said this. You've always had kind of a bad taste in your mouth for these Dalton movies. I did not watch these when they came out, but I remember when they did, just being excited about Bond and seeing the commercials. And I think my parents went to see the Bond movies, and I just had like that was sort of when a little bit of my fascination with Bond started, even though I didn't watch them until a few years later. I do have a bit of this like, oh, I was excited about Dalton, like I did know him from Flash Gordon. So and I didn't have the whole like, I know a lot of people were upset about Dalton because Pierce Brosnan was going to be Bond at the time. So there's all this like history
hmm.
and this baggage that this movie has that I don't think I have with it. So I will say I want to put it in my top, but after watching it again, despite the fact I like Dalton, despite the fact I really like Miriam Dabo, despite the fact that I like that it's a restart in a more serious tone, I don't know if I can put it in my top tier. So I would say it's probably more at the top of the middle. I'm going to go ahead and put it middle,
Okay.
but
Okay.
if we were going to segment further down, it's good. It's a good middle.
I thought for sure this would be on your top. I mean, you almost put Miriam Diabo on your dodgeball team for crying out loud.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if and maybe we'll get to the end, and we'll look at our rankings, and we'll be a little off center, and I would say, well, okay, I guess Living Daylights has got to be in the top. Maybe that's what happens. But there is no boat makeout scene in this movie, so I'm
There is. Yeah, you're right. 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 And what a horrible last shot to end this movie on. They just like pan over to the wooden curtain or whatever, the wardrobe curtain. I'm like, what? This is like the ugliest shot to end like this, fantastical James Bond movie.
Aaron, what have you chosen for episode 007?
007. It's 007. This is a big choice. I feel like there's a lot of pressure here. But the next movie for episode 007 will be Octopussy. Yes. Octopussy.
Yeah.
Can't wait. I can't wait.
All right. Well, I think we did it. I think we did another episode, another great episode. This one runs a little long, but that's okay. I think it was important because Dalton won't get as many episodes devoted to him as some of our other Bond actors, so it's all right.
And we're gonna have his family calling us, complaining like, "Hey guys, why? What's the deal?" And I felt like we spent a good, longer time. He's on your dodgeball team.
He is.
I mean,
he is.
He is a fantastic shot in this movie too. I just want to say that. And the shoot the gun out of Kara's hand, and then to shoot Pushkin in the chest, like those are tough shots.
They are, and that's another great reason he's on my team because
that's what I'm saying.
Spot on. He's
got great
nail every one of your. He's gonna. Oh, you guys are going down next game.
Dang it. So from all of us here, from James Pods, and from Alabama Dog as well. Thank you, Alabama Dog.
Even though he couldn't be here, even though he couldn't make it this time.
If you look up, see when his next speaking engagement is, or his next university session is, and good luck. Anyway, Carlin, it's been good.
Aaron, talk to you next time.
Bye.